Do you think life is simpler as time evolves? For some, it can be more complicated when facing issues about health, estate plans, probate, long-term care, and more. That's why Attorney-CPA Joe Cordell hosts ElderTalk with TuckerAllen, providing intelligent answers for those thinking about their future. Here's Attorney-CPA Joe Cordell.
Welcome to another episode of ElderTalk. How many people have heard of Meals on Wheels? Well, you know, there's an interesting history to that ministry, to that charitable organization, to that charitable force in the St. Louis area as well as nationally, that we want to talk a little bit about that history, but we also want to tie it into some practical things. But I think that many of you who've heard that phrase all your lives perhaps didn't really realize the history behind that and how it's changed currently and the relevance that it might have to you or those you love today.
I certainly didn't, Joe, and I'm so glad that Libby Travers is joining us today. She's the secretary of the Greater St. Louis Meals on Wheels Board of Directors. Libby, thank you for being with us. And let's talk about the background, the history of your organization. I understand it was started back in the 1970s.
Yes, it was founded in 1973 by a group of women who were affiliated with Church Women United. It was an interdenominational organization, and they just got the idea that there are people in their homes who want to stay in their homes, but they can't shop for themselves and cook for themselves. And perhaps this is something that we could do as Christian ladies, for the most part, to help people maintain their homes.
What city was it founded in?
Webster Groves was one of the first programs in 73.
Really? In the United States?
Oh, no. The history in the United States goes back further than that. I'm not exactly sure where the very first program in the country was formed, but in the St. Louis area, 73 was the beginning.
1973.
So these women recognized a need in the community.
Yes.
So was the idea from the outset that people would pay based on their ability to pay, or was there initially a different approach to?
No, I think originally we went to basically nursing homes and hospitals, our food sources. And we talked to the people in those places and said, this is a community outreach that we would like to get started. And they said, okay, we can provide food from our kitchen. And it varies from location to location. I think at the beginning it was 75 cents a day for the food itself. Mm-hmm. And we would charge the recipients, and we still do charge the recipients, whatever the cost of the hospital or the nursing home is.
And you still get your food even today from hospitals and nursing homes?
Yes.
And whatever they charge you is the cost you pass along?
Correct.
And give me an example of what that pricing might run.
I think the least expensive meal right now is around $3, maybe $2.75, and the more expensive, $4, $4.25, perhaps, depending.
And what do those meals include?
Well, we have a cold pack that has, and we also respect dietary restrictions. Some people can't have certain things, but an average meal would have a cold pack with milk, bread, butter, sometimes cheese, orange juice. We ask people if they orange juice, cranberry juice, apple juice is also available. That goes in the cold pack. And then the hot food changes every day, pretty much following whatever the menu at the facility is. They try to provide a balanced diet with the correct number of calories for an older person. And there's a good variety, too. And also, if they, for some reason, eat a certain food, we note that on their chart, and then we substitute something else. The nursing home does or the hospital does.
Gotcha.
So the fair market value, though, of these meals presumably would be higher than what your actual cost is. Maybe. I'm just wondering, I'm trying to put myself in the position of someone who's homebound and considering their options, assuming they have options.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there are nowadays. There's so many pre-made meals that are available to people, frozen. But we're more than just a meal. We check in on the people every day. We get to know the recipients. We know their habits, and the family members in particular really appreciate the fact that someone's just stopping in.
So maybe they're more interested in the stop-in.
Yeah,
actually.
That's really, I'd say that's a great part of it.
That's an important point. Okay. Yeah. That could easily be lost on our listeners.
Yeah.
So do you have contact information for the recipients, the contact of family members?
Yes.
So if one of the volunteers sees, something might be wrong.
Always. Yeah.
Okay.
We usually take the number of a neighbor and a family member, and we also take their doctor's information. We hesitate to call the doctor, but in an emergency, we have to talk to somebody.
Right.
And so often, people don't answer the phone if they don't know who it is. And our volunteers' cell phone numbers pop up. A family member would have no idea who's calling. So we often need to talk to somebody, and if we do, we've got those. And usually a neighbor will answer. Mm-hmm. I don't know why, but neighbor, relative, and doctor, we take that information.
And it does get confusing because there is a federal program that uses the name Meals on Wheels.
Yes.
Can you give us a little more insight about how that all came about?
The Mid-East Area Agency on Aging, you'll see their signs. It's MEAAA. They offered home-delivered meals. I'd say maybe 7 to 10 years ago they really got into it. And they are a nonprofit. However, they do have social workers, drivers, administrators that are paid by the federal government to administer their program. I think the drivers are also paid. So it's very different. It's not all volunteer like we are.
And they have a qualification process for people to be eligible to
yes,
obtain.
There is an age restriction. I believe you're supposed to be age 60 or over. And also they will request financial information, and then they will also screen you to make sure you don't have need for other services that the government offers, which is actually a good thing. We want people to be served. That's really the most important thing. But we are totally different from the government organization.
And another way in which you're different is that there are no eligibility requirements.
No.
Meaning somebody, irrespective of the amount of assets they have or don't have, they would qualify, and everybody pays the same price except you do you have some provision where somebody who may be poor?
Yes, we have subsidies available. Should someone express concerns about their ability to pay, we do have funds available to subsidize meals for those who need it.
And you rely strictly on donations. Where do these donations come from? I mean, mainly the public, or do you get
Mainly the public, yes. When people pass away, they often make provisions in their estate for Meals on Wheels because we're fresh in their mind. We've been serving them for the last few years of their lives, and they'll tell their sons or daughters, I want to leave something to these nice Meals on Wheels people. So, yeah, we usually in people's wills, we're surprised, actually, at the generosity that people have for us.
So now you start in 73. Do you know how many meals, ballpark, that you've served over this past, 40 plus years?
Well, since
something like that?
Yeah, I did a little research before I came, and since 1973, as of March of 2018, we've served over 15 million meals. Last year, we served 521 meals a day.
Wow.
So, yeah, over 15 million. So it's big. Although our numbers have been down a little bit, I think because of assisted living facilities, people tend to go there when they're still able to get along on their own pretty well. So not so many people just really. And as I said, also frozen meals are so much more convenient. But we still have a fair number of people that we enjoy serving.
And you're careful on how you screen your volunteers.
We try to solicit our volunteers from local churches, and perhaps someone in the church knows them either through the choir or their children go to school together or they're in the bridge club together. We really hesitate to send total strangers out to do deliveries.
So these drivers, how many do you have right now working?
86 a day, 86 routes, yeah.
And these people volunteer, and how long might it take a person who's a volunteer driver to do the deliveries each day?
Usually an hour, hour and a half. By the time you come to the nursing home or the hospital, you have to wait usually a little while, and you organize your food. And by the time you get it out to the car, and usually 6 to 8 people, usually not more than 10, an hour and a half maybe. We try to localize it. We group the people together so that
in routes,
yeah,
sort of.
Yeah.
And a majority of your volunteers are retirees, correct?
I would say yes, about 80%.
80%,
Although
wow.
truthfully, for women who have children in school, it's a good volunteer opportunity because it just lasts from 11 to 12:30 or 1. And And even if you have a toddler, you can bring the toddler along while you're doing it. The old people really actually like to see the toddlers.
Oh, I'm sure.
So, yeah.
So, when I was thinking about Meals on Wheels, thought it was about the meals, which of course in part it is, but now I realize that it's really probably much more about the visit.
It is, yeah. The visit is very important, really important.
So they don't simply ring the doorbell and leave it on the front step.
No. No, we're not allowed to do that. They have to answer the door.
And do they actually come in?
Some houses, we make notations. Bring it to the front door, bring it to the back door. And we usually come in if people want us to put it on the table for them. Some people need us to open it up for them, or we will cut it for them. We don't publicize that too much, but
really, so this is really a means of being sure that someone is okay and checking in on them daily.
Absolutely,
and that to me is the most important piece of this program.
Yes.
Well,
yes.
and it's really nice with cell phones too, because the driver. When I've gone to a house and the person doesn't answer, I call them. And usually if they've fallen asleep, the phone will wake them up. So I know they're okay. And I'll let them know, I'm at the door. Oh, honey, I'm sorry. I fell asleep. That happens a lot. And then if I don't get a response after I call the home number, I'll call the neighbor. And usually the neighbor will say, oh, she had a doctor's appointment this morning. I guess they forgot to tell you. So. But no, we are not allowed to just let it go. We can't just set the food on the front porch and leave. We have to track it down.
So it's offering another safeguard.
Yeah.
And
if we can't reach the neighbor, we call the family member, and usually they don't answer, but we'll leave a message. This is Meals on Wheels. We've been to your mother's house. She did not come to the door. I'm taking the meal with me. We don't like to leave it out in the elements, in the heat. The meal could go bad.
Sure, I get that.
Taking the meal with me. If it changes or you want me to come back, let me know. Our drivers are wonderful. I mean, they really care about the people. So,
have you ever had to actually call the police?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's very scary. But you know the people and you're more worried about them than anything else. But yes, yeah.
I can imagine. And why do you think your organization attracts so many retirees to volunteer?
Well, I think maybe in a way they see themselves in that position.
Yeah, I was starting to say I can see that.
I know. I at first when I was volunteering, I still had kids in school, but now that I'm in retirement age myself, I think I hope someday if I'm in this position that somebody like me would come along and brighten my day a little bit.
And what's the average length of time a retiree volunteer would stay with your organization?
We have many loyal volunteers. Some have been there 8, 10, 12 years.
Really?
Yeah, they usually they deliver until they just can't do it anymore.
And many of them, I suspect, develop relationships with these people over time.
Definitely.
And so it's really, as you were suggesting a while ago, it's often a little more than a delivery because they probably do more often than not go in the house. They probably do more often than not sit and visit or at least visit
for a few minutes. Not for too long, but yes. In fact, one of my friends told me the other day that one of her recipients said, honey, I just want to tell you, I really don't like the food all that much, but you girls are so nice. I just couldn't stop seeing you. So she laughed. She said, that was so funny.
Well, and as soon as you told me that you have rules to encourage people to move along, the drivers.
Yeah.
So I knew then that there is a visit that's very important to these people.
Well, and they'll bring our drivers, they bring up the newspaper if it's in the yard or if the mail's sitting out, they'll bring that in. And they're not required to do that, but it's just touching base with somebody. I know myself so often when I knock and they open the door, their face just lights up, just having somebody besides the television to talk to.
Well, I can imagine some of those people probably that's the only contact they have with someone during the day.
Yeah, I think it's true.
And what's really encouraging is that there is no qualification process, such as the governmental version of Meals on Wheels. With your organization, this is available to anybody. As long as they sign up, they pay for the meals, this $4, $5, whatever it is a day. That just seems like a marvelous benefit. Incidentally, is this available 7 days a week?
No, just Monday through Friday.
Okay, so they do need to have a weekend option.
Yes.
Was there ever a time when you did 7 days a week?
No, we've never delivered on the weekends.
Has there been any thoughts of expanding to the weekends?
Not that I'm aware of. Usually we just think Monday through Friday.
So has your program changed at all in terms of its format or its eligibility or its contents? Has there been any major changes in the program since 73 that you know of?
No, I don't think so. Basically,
Not that you were on board from 73.
No, no, but it's no, it's pretty much the same. We've modernized it a little bit with using computers and getting the database, on a computers. We used to do everything by hand. Now it's done. We do a lot of things electronically. But overall, it's pretty much the same.
And what type of feedback do you get from the retirees who volunteer with this program?
They love it. They love it. I think it's as important to them as it is to the recipients.
I can see that. And you probably have very little turnover. I mean,
No,
people,
not really. Yeah.
people who commit to this probably do it for a long period of time.
And what will happen also, someone will volunteer, and then they always think, oh, what if I want to go on vacation? What do I do? They'll get their sister or their husband or another family member because it is so much fun. And often the drivers go together, like a husband-wife team. So that way,
I've seen that,
if one of them can't make it for some reason, the wife just does it with her friend, or the husband will do it with a friend. It's just they're very committed to their people.
So how many people, though, we mentioned a while ago that these 540 or so people are divided into routes. How many people are on a typical route, recipients?
I would say 6 to 8 would be average.
So this is a pretty intimate group. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not 50, it's 6 to 8.
No.
And are they usually assigned to an area where they live, or
That
maybe
varies.
close?
That varies. Some of our programs that are in the city, for example, we have volunteers from the county who go into the city. So they set that whole day aside. They will go in, they'll help organize the meals, and then they'll also deliver them and then go back home. So they're really not delivering in their neighborhood. But the majority of the programs do deliver in their own neighborhood.
I imagine that would work better, especially on bad weather days.
Yeah.
So tell me then how it starts out. They first go to the nursing home or the hospital. Do they help assemble the meal in some fashion?
No, in the past, we were allowed to go into the kitchen and actually dish the food into the containers ourselves. But I think there have been some issues with the health department
see that.
or liability of people spilling hot soup on themselves.
Sure.
So now we still pack the cold food outside of the kitchen. We have a little work area where we do that. But then hospital or nursing home employees actually dish the hot food into the containers. Now we seal the container and organize the container into the route coolers. But that's one change I will say. We did have more hands-on in the kitchen, but now we don't do that so much.
And that starts at around 9 in the morning, correct?
Usually we 9 for the cold food packers. There's a day secretary who comes in because there are always changes. People call, so-and-so isn't going to be there today. Things happen. But the secretary and then the packers come early, like 9:30, and then the drivers come around 11. And then it's all over by 12:31.
Do you ever get any complaints about the food, or people
Of course. Who doesn't complain about the food at one time or another? But
It's hard to complain for that price, but
Yeah.
I'm sure people rise to the occasion.
it's so funny because we put food preferences. We write, at least in the Webster program, we write on the lid. And sometimes I'll look at the lid and it will say, no ham, no spinach, no carrots, no turkey. No, I think, what do they want?
Right. Some people are hard to please.
So, but how much can you customize a meal at this price?
We usually have one or two sub items, that if they can't eat the meat, we have a different meat or
So
something.
you have a vegan option. Vegan or is it vegetarian?
Not really. No, not really. We don't actually, but I don't think anyone's ever requested vegan that I'm aware of. But
How about vegetarian?
no, I don't think
No?
so. No, I can't. At least in the Webster program, I cannot think of anyone that's vegetarian.
Is it more along the lines, say, of healthy heart diet or someone that's diabetic?
Low salt, that type of thing we can do. I guess if you were vegan, we could serve you because we always serve vegetables. All you do is just eliminate the meat, but I can't remember anyone.
So I
ever
guess
doing
the
it.
big issue would be whether that particular hospital or nursing home has that classification. If they do, then they could extend that to the
Yes,
meal.
I would
I
imagine.
think most hospitals do have the
Yeah.
vegetarian option.
Yeah, I'm sure they do.
Vegan's a little more difficult.
So for the most part, I'm sure have very happy clients for more than one reason. But still, I mean, making people happy serving them food, even if it's at a reduced price, is a difficult thing to pull off regularly. Essentially, you guys don't control the quality of the food, but it's at least the quality that the hospital would otherwise have, or the nursing home would otherwise have, which we know that they have demands on them for. And food's gotten better. I'm reluctant to use the phrase institutional food.
Yes.
But food's gotten a lot better in hospitals.
Absolutely. It's nothing like it was 20 years ago.
But the thing that I want to keep circling back to, but for fear that our listeners may miss this point, one reason we wanted to have you on today and we want to focus on is the fact that this program is about much more than having food delivered 5 days a week.
Right.
I mean, this touch that occurs daily, this contact, is really far more valuable, in my judgment, than the meal itself.
I couldn't agree more.
So many people don't realize that if they don't have loved ones living nearby, if their children may live in another city or state, that there are options for someone to be checking in. And that's really what I think is most attractive about this program, especially since there are other ways to have foods delivered. But there aren't other ways to have somebody volunteer, who by definition is somebody is there because they want to be.
Right.
They're not there for money, for compensation, so they care. And these people have come to know that particular person. It's the same people doing the same route for relatively long periods of time, right?
They definitely become friends.
So where do you find that for free? Because that's free. Because you're paying whatever you're paying for the food, which is below what you'd otherwise pay for food. And yet now you have this component.
You're finding good, caring, compassionate people that love what they do.
Yes.
Yeah, that care, because by definition they care. Because these people could be doing something else with their days.
Right.
So do you have something where you celebrate or an appreciation event once a year for your volunteers?
That varies from program to program. We have 13 different programs, and I would say the majority of them do have a holiday party of some sort, normally around Christmas time. And then we do provide little gifts to the volunteers at the end of the year, something nominal, a notepad or a pen or something.
Just saying thank you.
Yeah, a little thank you gesture, yeah.
So what part of the city do most of the people who are in your program, the recipients, what part of the city do they live primarily?
We're all over, city and county.
Yeah, like Chesterfield.
Yes. We have West County,
North County, I'm
North
sure.
County, Creve Coeur, Midtown West, Normandy, Rittner, South County, Valley Park, Webster Groves, Afton, Bridgeton, Crestwood, we're all over.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
And if someone wanted to volunteer or make a donation, how can they do that?
Well, there are two ways that you can reach us. One is call our phone number, which is area code 314-374-9549. 314-374-9549. Or you can visit our website, mowstl.org.
Very good. I hope people got that down. If not, they can go to our website,
Right.
can't they?
Yeah.
We can post that.
Perfect. That'd be wonderful.
Libby, I hope that a lot of people hear this message and consider this as a viable means, not only for them to have a meal 5 days a week, but to have someone who's checking in on them, somebody who cares.
Right.
It's a great volunteer opportunity. I can honestly say I've gotten a lot more out of it than I've put into it. It's just really been...
I can definitely see that.
Libby Travers, we appreciate your being on, and we'll take a break now. We'll be back in a few moments with another episode of Elder Talk.
My pleasure. Thank you.
You're listening to Elder Talk with TuckerAllen, providing intelligent answers for those thinking about their future. Sponsored by TuckerAllen, your estate and elder law advisors. And now, Attorney-CPA Joe Cordell.
Okay, we're back with Elder Talk. Now let's transition, Jill, to our roving celebrity reporter. Although this week, I guess we wouldn't characterize this as a celebrity matter, but nonetheless, very interesting. I guess we should have our roving reporter, Dan, introduce this subject. Dan, tell us what we're going to talk about today that's in the news.
All right. Well, this is the story of Mizzou alum from 1926, Sherlock Hibbs. He died in 2002 at the age of 98, and he was a Wall Street financier. And in his will, he had given a gift to the University of Missouri under the conditions that it be used to employ 3 chairs and 3 distinguished professorships dedicated to articulate the disciples of the free and open market. Basically, Austrian economics.
And he used the phrase Austrian economics, didn't he?
Yes.
So, and this was in his will. It was a specific gift.
Yes.
Subject to that condition, that the professor who was endowed would teach this particular philosophy.
Yes. The breakdown of the chairs and the money totaling $5 million, $1.1 million for each of the 3 chairs and the 3 other distinguished professorships rather, $567,000 for 2, and then one at $566,000. And if they don't abide by the terms of the gift, Mizzou would forfeit the money and it would go to Hillsdale College in Michigan.
So the total gift was around $5 million,
Yes.
right? And there was a trigger that in the event that University of Missouri failed to abide by these terms, then the money would shift to another university. A university, incidentally, has a reputation of being conservative.
Yes.
I think many of you are familiar with Hillsdale.
Sure.
Some of you perhaps have had children that go to Hillsdale. Maybe you went to Hillsdale. It's a marvelous school, and they have some great publications and whatnot. So I'm a bit of a fan of Hillsdale, that disclosure. And I can see how this donor would think that if University of Missouri is not willing to assure that this more conservative perspective or philosophy be taught in economics, then it'll revert to Hillsdale, where he was very confident that they would embrace that because they share that sort of worldview in many ways at
Right.
Hillsdale. They're known for having a conservative view politically and economically.
Absolutely. And aside from that aspect in his will, he was already giving money to Hillsdale. There was $1.3 million set aside just for Hillsdale already. But Hillsdale was on the hook should Mizzou fail to live up to their end of the bargain in regards to teaching Austrian economics for another $5 million.
Meaning they would be the beneficiary.
Yes.
So Hillsdale was aware of this condition in the gift to Mizzou.
Yes.
Go ahead. Tell us what happened.
So in July of 2019, there was a suit regarding Mizzou not living up to their end of the bargain.
What was in the will?
What was in the will. Mizzou claiming that every year they've sent a letter to Hillsdale College signed by the chairs and the professorships saying that they were living up to the standards and the terms of the will. And Hillsdale basically said in their statement, that's not good enough. We don't know that you're teaching based on these practices. We don't know that this is what is being taught.
And
They
truth be
wanted
known, they probably had done some their own investigative work, and they were skeptical that any of these conditions were being met.
Oh, you know they had to be monitoring some way.
Yes. The lawsuit claimed that, or from Hillsdale's perspective, that Mizzou found the terms of the gift, quote unquote, distasteful, and that Mizzou was concerned that the Truass College of Business was being held hostage by a particular ideology.
As they would put it.
As they would put it. Now, Hillsdale has every reason to feel this way because if they're found to be correct, they also get $5 million. But at the same time, you wonder with a big university, a big college of business, are they really living up to those standards?
Especially with the reputation that University of Missouri has. I mean, it's not known as among the more conservative schools. I mean, it's probably a very Keynesian sort of leftist worldview. Even in the business school, many people think, oh, if it's a business school, no matter what college campus it's on, it's going to be teaching conservative, laissez-faire, free market stuff. And that's not true. Often people in business schools actually do lean more toward a Keynesian, state-based economy in many ways. So it doesn't surprise me that there was some resistance in terms of fulfilling this condition with University of Missouri. And apparently this donor anticipated that there might be some failure on the part of the recipient to live up to these conditions. And this is one of the lessons to be learned by this, is that this person was very smart. He realized that he would put a condition in this that would monitor Missouri to assure that they fulfill these obligations. So they incentivized this third-party monitor to keep their eyes on it. And this happened precisely as designed. You know it?
Yeah.
And that's one of the lessons for us when we're thinking about estate planning, and we're thinking about how do we assure that our wishes are fulfilled. This is a creative way in which you can make a gift and at the same time assure that the terms and conditions that you want to apply are in fact fulfilled.
Right.
So continue with the story here.
So, Mizzou claims, and they have a university spokesman saying, we take responsibility to fulfill our donors' wishes, and we feel we've done so with every gift. Now, the attorney for Hillsdale College, very interesting detail.
Yeah.
Former Missouri Governor Jay Nixon.
He's a big player in this
He
situation.
is a big player in this situation.
They chose their counsel well.
Yes, they did. Hillsdale originally filed the suit in St. Louis County Circuit Court, but it was later moved to Boone County. And the endowment itself, after investments, had grown to about $9 million. However, the will stipulated that none of the positions can be vacant for more than 5 years.
Okay.
At the time of the filing of the suit, 2 of the positions were vacant. They were looking to be filled, but they were vacant. Now, that adds another layer to this, like, how eager are they willing to, fill these positions?
How long had they been vacant?
Right.
I haven't found any information regarding that. However, it's interesting to see, especially given the fact that, there's so many claims regarding, are they resistant? Are they not resistant? Are they following the terms of the will? It's all very interesting.
So what is the outcome?
The outcome of the case, funnily enough, they settled out of court. Mizzou returned $4.7 million. Mizzou kept the money that it earned from the gift through investments, which was about $4.6.
So it essentially returned what the gift had been, which is $5 million, close to $5 million.
Yeah.
And they kept what had been earned on that as interest.
Yes.
And that's very telling.
It is. I mean, why would you? But what's interesting to me is Mizzou's statement regarding this is that their statement is that they've agreed to settle, but they don't regard this as any concession on their part that they failed to fulfill the conditions of the gift. They would still, if asked, say we did. Mm-hmm. To which any of us might say, well, if that's true, then why would you have given the $5 million to somebody who's suing you,
right,
or $4.7 million to somebody who's suing you? Why would you surrender if you, in fact, had the capability of winning the war?
Exactly. And the fact they settled out of court, can you imagine what would have happened if it would have gone to court?
They obviously thought they were going to lose.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's also interesting from Hillsdale's perspective because their general counsel, not Jay Nixon, but Robert Norton, who was on the general counsel, said in his quote, "It's truly a loss because there's a whole generation of Mizzou students who learn nothing about Austrian economics."
Well, they wouldn't have anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're put in the position, except now we have somebody not funding the Keynesian philosophy that they would come to know very well.
Yeah. Even when they won, they're still like, but what about the kids? Guys, you'll be able to teach the kids now that you have the money. It's fine.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I understand what Hillsdale is saying. They're saying that the intention here was for kids who can't afford private schools. In other words, that's one of the primary purpose of state universities is for kids throughout the state of Missouri might otherwise have had a place to go and learn about a economic philosophy, laissez-faire, that this person who passed away feels is a great asset to them, and that as voters and citizens, that to the extent that they vote and support that economic system, that our nation will prosper. So it is a shame that what happened was Missouri loses that. Missouri will not be able to offer that to its citizens.
Right.
But it doesn't surprise me. University of Missouri has taken a left turn in more ways than one. I mean, this surrender to political correctness And it's just that things have not gone very well for this school in the last 5 years. I read about 2 years ago that their enrollment had dropped 20%.
Yes.
20%.
And that was after, and I really believe it all started back with the protest. What was that, 4 or 5 years ago? I mean, they have been getting bad press.
I don't even remember what the protest was. I just remember that it was something related to political correctness or something. I don't want to get into the subject of whatever it was, but I just know that the administration is out of step with the citizens of the state of Missouri. And a lot of people in Missouri are not happy with the way that this university has been run. So now here, though, again, is a wonderful lesson for us all when we think about our wishes as we do estate planning. To circle back here, that let's ask, how might this apply with respect to other gifts that we might make? A lot of ways in which this train can go off the track when you give money to charitable institutions, universities or otherwise. So you have to choose very carefully the way you word those, and it is smart to include conditions to assure that in the event that there's a failure to meet this ask or this objective for the giver, is to create an alternative. And in that alternative, create a monitor and the incentive on the part of someone to do exactly what Hillsdale did in this case.
Right.
To be honest with you, my wife and I had done something very similar to this, and not having heard about this case, matter of fact, predating this, but we had done a very similar thing where we did name a second educational institution for fear of something not being fulfilled by the primary recipient in a gift. So keep in mind that often donors lose control of the things that they give away, and in order for that to not happen, I mean, after all, you're the one who's giving something to this institution, whatever it may be, and you have the right to say, I would like for it to be used for this. And if the institution doesn't want to use it for that, they should say no. For example, if it is in fact true, and I suspect it is, that the business school at the University of Missouri felt that they're being, what was their language, tied to an ideology, if that was their interpretation of this condition, that you have a professor dedicated to this school of economics, then fine, don't take the money.
Right.
But don't take the money.
It's very simple.
Yeah, don't take their money and then say, I find the condition offensive. Mm-hmm. Now, they never conceded that they found the condition offensive, but assuming this allegation is correct, which I find believable, that behind closed doors, speaking candidly among themselves, often academics, people who live in an academic world, mm-hmm. they often look with a bit of scorn sometimes on the wealthy donors that give them money. Of course, when they interact directly with these wealthy donors, it's all smiles and appreciation. But in fact, often they don't have respect for the values of these donors, especially often conservative Christians.
Right.
And yet they don't want to offend them because they know they're the source often of large gifts, buildings and other things
Funding,
they're giving.
Yeah.
So I think people who are in a position to give, especially to educational institutions, not exclusively would I launch this charge in their direction, but certainly primarily I would say, they need to recognize and greet with some degree of skepticism the apparent willingness of these people to take their money and do with it what have been asked by the donors. And it's better to build in conditions and triggers that can assure that there's a plan B in the event that plan A isn't working out. Very interesting. Anything else now as it stands, are these people who are employed, who are hired to fill these positions, these professorships at University of Missouri's Business School, will they be keeping their jobs? Do we know that?
It's all a bit uncertain. The Kansas City Star's article listed their names in regards to their employment status, but now that the dust has settled on the case, you wonder if the money that they're getting back from investment might be able to pay for it a little bit more. Now, it didn't sound like they were going to continue with the program, judging by the results of the case and the perceptions out there regarding Austrian economics. But it all seemed very suspicious.
Yeah, what was interesting to me was I first came across this controversy in the Wall Street Journal. And the Wall Street Journal, in an op-ed piece, was lambasting University of Missouri. And they were clearly of the opinion that these terms had been breached. And then I read a few days later, I think it was a couple days, this response to the op-ed piece, which was by the journalism staff. And this op-ed piece was written by the professor, or one of the professors who occupied this role. And
At Mizzou.
Yes, and arguably he protesteth too much, that phrase. In other words, he was saying that he had been very conscientious in trying to teach these principles related to Austrian economics. Von Mises, I think, is the name of the specific professor that was mentioned in the gift.
Yes.
Or this Austrian thinker that was mentioned in the gift. Mm-hmm. And so this professor was insistent in this response in the Wall Street Journal that he had been complying with this requirement. Mm-hmm. But it just wasn't very credible. I think what everyone recognized at University of Missouri was this gift did contain language, and they couldn't blow it off entirely.
Right.
So I think that you often have to be able to peel back the surface of the way things appear and get to the substance of whether or not there's compliance. Because, University of Missouri wouldn't be foolish. They wouldn't simply run roughshod over this with total disregard. They're smarter than that. They knew that there were very explicit conditions about not just conservative economics, but I think von Mises was mentioned, this professor of Austrian economics. Definitely Austrian economics was mentioned. So it was pretty specific in the gift. So I do think that University of Missouri, though not shrewdly enough, tried to dot its I's and cross its T's. And I think, though, that what happened when this lawsuit was filed was that was peeled away and the surface was examined. So I think this response that appeared in the Wall Street Journal, and the response apparently into the stage of the litigation that this had gotten to, was that we have complied, and they could point to this. And those are those superficial covers that you would expect them intelligently to have when they're in fact doing what they want with money that they're supposed to do very specifically something else. So I'm not surprised that there was a response, and I'm not surprised that it did require some peeling away, and it would only have been at trial that you would have gotten down to the real substance of what had happened with this money. So I think from 10,000 feet, University of Missouri was waving the flag that, look, we did this all correctly. We're valiantly complying with this donor's wishes, but the helicopter was going to land, and once you hit ground, you look around, it turns out that perhaps there wasn't as much substance to that claim. Anyway, that's my read on this. So I think most people realize that professors are assured positions, and tenured professors especially, when they are given a chair that is funded. So a professorship, and especially a distinguished professorship, is a chair in which someone has given enough money that usually the interest from that will pay the salary. Sometimes it's the interest from that gift coupled with something given by the university that together is enough to assure that professor occupies that position for the balance of their career, knowing that the money's there for their payment. So it's an honor as well as a source of great economic security to be given a distinguished professorship. And apparently that's what had happened here, was this money was used to create these, I think I read 3 professorships.
3.
Yes,
but we'll speak as this one person. So it's a great source of economic security as well as job security, meaning that you can't be fired.
Right.
Now that the money's disappeared, in other words, the chair has come out from under the professorship, you might say, it is going to be interesting whether there's some unemployment. How many people total were associated with this money in terms of employees?
There were supposed to be 6. Currently 4 were filled.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the money is not going to be there for this, right? Because
No.
incidentally, some of this money...
Unless they use the investment. I don't know how much that would go, though.
Well, and I think a lot of it's been spent. right?
They state that they are getting to keep the investment. Now, I don't know if that money's already been spent elsewhere or what the deal is there, but...
Yeah, because I'm thinking that the lawsuit, now again, I've not read the pleadings, but often you would sue for not only the amount of the original gift, but anything that it earned in the hands of the wrongdoer. That's the typical arithmetic. So your claim would be if you should have had the $5 million from the time it's actually given because it never was complied with, you would ask also for the interest and earnings that you would otherwise have had during that period of time. So I think that this settlement is where they're simply giving up close to what the original gift was. But I think that that larger amount could have, a good portion of which was probably spent in earnings. I mean, it's spent on these salaries of these 6 or so people. So it's going to be interesting. I assume that there would be some people who would lose their jobs as a result of this. There's just not enough money.
Yeah.
And
So
not to
maybe-
mention enrollment's down.
So maybe a fan of Keynesian economics will pass away soon that will leave them a substitute gift.
All I know is, as a fellow Mizzou alum, he also gave to Kansas, and that's not the way to go about that. His lawyer should have stepped in and was like, hey, you're going to run into some problems there.
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah. This guy clearly cared more about education than he did the school itself, you know? Meaning he cared more about people learning about these philosophies of economics.
Yes. I think you're absolutely right. You hit the nail on the head.
Absolutely.
Well, very interesting, Dan. We thank you for this report and update and this object lesson for all of us. So till next time, this has been another episode of Elder Talk. Take care.
You've been listening to Elder Talk with TuckerAllen, providing intelligent answers for those thinking about their future, with Attorney-CPA Joe Cordell. Sponsored by TuckerAllen, your estate and elder law advisors. For more information, visit TuckerAllen.com. Listen again next Saturday for another edition of Elder Talk with TuckerAllen. The choice of a lawyer is an important decision and should not be based solely on advertisements.